And good morning, good afternoon. Thank you all so much for joining. Welcome to the Amazon FSx for NetApp ONTAP webinar, hosted by both NetApp and AWS. Today's topic is on SQL databases. So we're going to discuss how you can leverage Amazon FSx for NetApp ONTAP to optimize your SQL databases. My name is Mackenzie Manzo. I am an FSxN specialist here at NetApp, supporting our ISV customers. We have a dedicated team of specialists at both NetApp and AWS here to support you. I'm joined by two of our experts to lead today's session. So Semyon Mazer is a product enablement specialist focusing on Amazon FSx for NetApp ONTAP. NetApp. And then Craig Cooley is a specialist SA focusing on Microsoft workloads at AWS. So just real quick, a couple housekeeping items. Please go ahead and stay on mute. This session will be recorded and we will share the recording in a follow-up email. We will also include polls, so please participate in those. And then please use the Q&A feature to submit your questions, and we'll leave the last 10 minutes to review those questions. So with that, we can go through the agenda. So this morning, we will share customer success stories within our ISV customers. We'll discuss options for running SQL Server on AWS and review those challenges. We will discuss how Amazon FSxN can help address those challenges and some of the benefits of the service, followed by a demo of BlueXP Workload Factory, which is our free SaaS tool to help automate and optimize your operations. So we'll roughly cover the overview within 35 to 40 minutes, followed by the demo, and then we'll leave the last 10 minutes for questions. So with that, I will pass it over to Semyon.
Thank you, Mackenzie. Hi, everyone, and welcome again. My name is Semyon Mazor. I'm a product enablement specialist at NetApp, focusing on Amazon FSx for NetApp ONTAP. And to gain your appetite for today's session, I would like to tell you a couple of customer stories, starting with Arcesium, which is a financial service software company. And they faced the challenges they needed to reduce time that required to perform database refreshes. They needed a cost-efficient way to create disaster recovery site, and they also faced challenge of maintaining a consistent point-in-time view across multiple databases. So they tried to find the best solution for their challenges, and they found by using FSx for ONTAP as the storage layer for the SQL databases, they could reduce 46% of their storage cost. They can improve the speed of the database snapshot 5 times, and they get 80% reduction in refresh costs. On top of all that, they also got efficient disaster recovery environment. So FSx ONTAP made a real difference for this company. Next, Orion. They are independent software vendor and the Financial Service Institute. They had over 500 terabytes of SQL data across 130 volumes, and they wanted to reduce latencies, improve disaster recovery, and cut storage costs. They also were concerned about inefficiency in self-managed SQL environments and concerned about the peak performance. So they also found FSx for ONTAP, moved to FSx ONTAP for the SQL state. And what they achieved is 65% of cost reduction in the storage for the storage usage. They cut the SQL query latency to under 5 milliseconds, and they significantly improved disaster recovery, which enabled faster failover times. So yes, they could achieve all of that thanks to moving to FSx ONTAP for the databases. Last example for today is Advisor Engine. It is a wealth management company, and they needed to handle massive customer growth, and they already experienced a performance challenge with their Microsoft SQL servers. So without altering their architecture, they would have been forced to scale up to the next available service level, doubling the deployment cost. So they're trying to find a better solution instead of just going up with the existing deployment and doubling the cost. And what they found is that by moving to FSx ONTAP, they could achieve 50% of cost reduction for the storage for the data, while having 7 times better database performance. So at the same time, they reduce cost by half and get 7 times faster performance. They also get 6 times TPM improvement. And on top of that, FSx ONTAP allowed them quick ephemeral clones of the environments for staging, troubleshooting, and offline backups with full validity checks. So those three examples, I think the numbers just speak for themselves, right? Those are great numbers. Those are just 3 examples out of dozen that we have for particularly for databases using FSx ONTAP, and we have many other customers that are already benefiting. And what we are going to show you today is how your company can also achieve such benefits by using FSx ONTAP for your databases. But to start with, I would like to start from the start and ask Craig, where do we start from? So assuming I'm a customer exploring my architecture on AWS, what are my choices? What would be the consideration for each of them?
Sure, thanks. So as you may know, there's a variety of databases available to run on AWS, such as SQL Server, Oracle, and MySQL. The first option that you have is to run these databases as a managed service. So that would be like AWS RDS. And in this scenario, Amazon takes care of the underlying hardware, managing the operating system patches, and so forth. And it's easily scalable. You can simply just change the size of the resources, storage, compute, and so forth, and memory. The second option would be to run a self-managed database. And in that case, you would start off with an Amazon EC2 instance or VM, and then assemble the needed storage, such as our direct attached storage, which would be Amazon Elastic Block Storage, or you could use a managed file system or a managed storage service like FSx ONTAP. Next slide. Okay, so the 2 choices here, again, some considerations between a managed service. The first one would be with a managed database, it's very flexible. Again, it's managed by AWS, so there's very little work that has to be done from your side. The second, with self-managed, you have a lot more flexibility. You can use some features inside of the databases that might not be exposed with the managed database service. And can you go ahead and click? Yeah. So, and if there's a database that we don't offer as a managed service, you can certainly install any database on an EC2 instance. You can also fine-tune performance. In the case of Microsoft SQL, you do have the ability to bring a license that you may already own. And so if you've already purchased a SQL license and you have the license mobility, you're able to bring that into a self-managed environment, whereas you couldn't do that with a managed database service.
All right. So thank you, Craig. So today we're going to focus on the self-managed part, and whether it's because there's a specific version or capacity that is not supported by RDS, or you prefer to fine-tune the configuration and have more control, or to reuse existing licenses, which each of them can be a great reason. We're going to focus on this option today. So moving to the challenges of running databases, and actually it's no matter where you're running your databases, you're probably facing the same challenges. First, how are you going to protect those databases, right? How can I ensure that my databases are resilient and protected? Second, how can I ensure that I achieve and then constantly maintain the low latency connectivity? Third is how can we most optimally deploy and manage deployment costs, and then refresh databases and create new environments of the database that I have? And fourth, how can we ensure optimal performance without cost overruns? So those are the main challenges, and to help you make a better decision with the context of those considerations, AWS has its well-architected framework. This framework assists in constructing the most secure, highest performant, resilient, and efficient infrastructure possible. It provides consistent approach for customers and AWS partners to evaluate architectures and offers guidance and best practices for implementing designs that can scale with your application needs over time. So if we look at the 4 challenges that we just mentioned, we consider that align to the different pillars, right? So if we look on the reliability pillar, there's the question of how can I ensure my data remains available even in an event of failure or disaster? If we look on the performance efficiency, how can I maintain the low latency my database need? If we look on the operational excellence, how quickly can I create new environments and refresh their data, and what would be the associated costs? We reach us to the 4th pillar of how can I run my database with a specific budget and in a cost optimal manner. So to help you with all those challenges, there's a service called Amazon FSx for NetApp ONTAP. And before I go ahead and introduce it, I would like to ask you, our audience today on this session, to run with the first poll today. So the question is, how familiar are you with Amazon FSx for NetApp ONTAP? This will help you, help us to tell the story that fits mostly to at least most of the audience. So Lior, if you can run the first poll already. And there are a couple of options. First is that I use it as a storage format databases, meaning you're already there. Maybe you would like to learn a bit more about what are the benefits you can gain, because usually customers having part of what they're utilizing FSx for, and then they figuring out there's more of that because of the feature richness it provides. Second option, I use it for other workloads, but not yet, at least for my databases. Third option, I have learned about it, but I haven't used it already, so you're probably here to learn more about what it is and what it provides your databases. And fourth option is I have very little knowledge about it. So please click on the most fitting option, whether it's you're already using it for databases, you're using it for different workloads, or you just learn about it, but didn't use it already, or you just hear there is such a thing and came here to learn more. So let's see the result we got. All right, so roughly almost half, 47%, have a very little knowledge about it, which is great. We're glad you are here today. We're going to tell you all what you need to know about what FSx fonts are going to provide your databases. 37% learned about it but haven't used it, and much less than that already use it for workloads or using it for databases. So great, and there's a good reason why you're here. So let me introduce to it. Amazon FSx for NetApp ONTAP is an intelligent data infrastructure for any workload, including well-architected databases on AWS. It provides powerful database protection and performance with exceptional cost efficiency. It is an fully managed AWS storage service utilizing NetApp technologies. It is AWS service provided by AWS, built by AWS, supported by AWS, part of the FSx family, which is part of the storage offering that AWS offers. Now, what's unique about this service that it utilizes and leverages NetApp's industry-leading ONTAP technology, which has been developed over the past 30 years and utilized by numerous food companies and large corporations with the most demanding requirements. So essentially, it's an ONTAP version as a fully managed offering at AWS. Now, it provides a lot of great features, and this is why dozen thousand of companies use it for their operations. And this is actually what makes it unique from other storage services, that it provides a comprehensive set of features that turn it into expert storage for any workload. Now, those features can be grouped into 5 main pillars, which are accessibility, resilience and protection, data security, price performance, data mobility. Now, as you can see on your slide, it provides a lot of great features. Each of them can be a reason to use it. We're not going to cover all of them. We're just going to focus on those that help with the challenges we mentioned. So FSx for ONTAP can improve all the pillars of the well-architected framework, but we're not going to cover everything today. We will stay focused on the four that we mentioned as the main challenges for running databases. So now let's open each of these challenges and see how FSx for ONTAP can help you deal with it. We'll start with reliability. So organization require the data to be protected, and FSx for ONTAP offers several layers of data protection. First, each FSx for ONTAP file system is highly available by default, supporting single AZ and multi availabilities on deployment. So every FSx for ONTAP is highly available, and it also can be available across availability zone. Now, FSx for ONTAP can be used as files storage or as block storage. So whether you use it, it's available as across availability zone, and if you use it for block storage, know that it is the only block storage that you can use as a shared storage across availability zone. Now, moving to the data protection aspects, the first layer of the data protection provided by local snapshot, which are read-only point-in-time images of the data. These snapshots are lightweight and created instantly. They utilizing the unique NetApp snapshot technology, and they also database consistent, making it easy to recover without any roll forward activities. So those snapshots use as the initial layer of data copies stored locally on the same file system, allowing for fast restoration in case of data corruption. So using the snapshot, you can create another copy of your data in seconds and restore it very, very quickly. The second layer is disaster recovery. FSx for ONTAP offers advanced capability with cross-regional replication, which is built into the service, highly efficient replication engine. It's called SnapMirror. And this ensures the presence of additional mirrored copy of the data, even if a full region experiences an outage. In such cases, the database can fail over to the secondary region immediately. The third layer of data protection is backup, which allows for additional copy of the data in a different format, and is providing extra layer of protection in cases of emergency. Also, FSx for ONTAP is integrated with AWS backup, and it is highly efficient due to utilization of NetApp snapshots. So the result is fast backup, rapid restoration, and also cost savings. So this is the first pillar, a lot of technology to make sure your databases are available whenever you need them to be available, at least from the storage perspective. This is the first pillar of reliability. Let's move to the next pillar of performance efficiency. To make sure your database is gaining the low latencies it needs, FSx for ONTAP provide high performance. It starts with high throughput of 36 gigabytes, and in fact, it can go even more than that, but it probably will be enough, 36 gigabytes per second. Then it incorporates a unique in-memory cache and NVMe cache, which further enhances the performance of frequently accessed data. And with SSD disks, FSx for ONTAP provides hundreds of thousands of IOPS, ensuring that your databases receive results within the required time frame. So all those here to make sure that your databases receive the result on the time frame that it needs. Moving to the next pillar, which is operational excellence. Most organizations have multiple database environments, including production databases and additional databases for development, testing, pre-production, schema validation, and others. Now, typically, each additional copy requires the same amount of storage as the original one. However, FSx for ONTAP offers a different approach. FSx for ONTAP creates snapshots, which, as we mentioned, are lightweight point-in-time images of the data. And because they are lightweight, they are created instantly without affecting your production environment. Now, based on this snapshot, new environments can be created by creating thin clones of the snapshot. Clones can be spun up from this snapshot without impacting performance, capacity, or cost. Yes, without affecting capacity, performance, or cost. And the best part of these clones is that they perform just like real copies of the data. They are fully writable, and you can create and share as many usable copies of the production data as needed without affecting production environment or granting access to it. So instead of consuming 550 or 500 times the storage capacity, depends on the number of databases you have, you can achieve the same results using the same amount of storage. The only added capacity starts to being accumulated when you make changes to the new environments. So cloning can really be a game changer in how fast you can refresh your database environment and how quickly you can provide other teams with access to the environment they needed, how quickly can you create new database environment, and effectively it can shorten the development cycles of the company. Now, moving to the last pillar of cost optimization, we touch upon thin cloning again, but there's several layers of how FSx for ONTAP can help you gain the reduction. And again, we saw a couple of examples a couple of minutes back. So this is how they could achieve those cost savings. FSx ONTAP incorporates several built-in data reduction technologies that help to save on cost. It begins with data reduction technology, including deduplication, compression, which effectively reduce the capacity of your data. The snapshot that I mentioned are very efficient and help to save on the capacity and associated costs. FSx ONTAP also have a tiering feature that also helps to save on cost. But the real game changer here is thin cloning, because it's not only shortening the development cycle, but also significantly impact the cloud bill. So instead of paying for multiple copies, as we said, 550 or 500, you only pay for one, because the initial environment is smaller than the original 100% capacity thanks to the storage efficiencies, and then subsequent copies only add a fraction of the data. So the result is combined total of 100% of the data. This is really can shrink the overall capacity, the data capacity. But it doesn't stop here, because the performance capability that I mentioned earlier are configurable. So this means that for environment that do not require the highest level of performance, which of course would come with the cost, they can be configured to lower performance levels. Now, here where it starts to be even more interesting. Because of the way FSx for ONTAP is integrated within AWS, it enables you to utilize the network bandwidth to the storage layer, and by that achieve the same performance with fewer EC2 cores compared to other storage services. And this can lead to significant cost savings. So we see very commonly customers that migrating environments from on-premises to AWS, and in order to meet the required IOPS requirements and to overcome the limit of the bandwidth from the compute to the storage, that we need to go to higher EC2 instances, more than what they actually need. And by using FSx ONTAP, you can use just the right amount of compute with the vCPU and memory for your workload, because the bandwidth is going through the network bandwidth and the connectivity from the compute to the storage. So this is another part not related directly to the storage, but allows you to save on compute costs. And lastly, FSx ONTAP, as we said, has a replication mechanism built in. So utilizing this storage-based replication allow you to save on the database licenses. And I will show a diagram to explain this further. But I would like to stop here for a moment and ask again, Craig, reflecting to what I presented in the last couple of minutes, where you see customers having the most interest, where you have the most conversation with the customers around deploying databases.
Yeah, thanks. Most of the conversations I've had are around cost reduction and then fault tolerance, and by extension, disaster recovery. So Amazon FSx for NetApp ONTAP can help customers reduce the storage costs through the technologies like you described, like data deduplication, storage tiering, and compression. So that's the fundamental storage level. The other thing it can do is help to reduce the licensing cost for Microsoft SQL. So SQL has traditionally been used with failover clusters, Microsoft failover clusters, and that only requires SQL Standard. After that, Microsoft introduced always on availability groups, which required SQL Enterprise. So with FSX for ONTAP, what we can do is, in some cases, switch back to SQL standard and then rely on failover clustering and the NetApp storage in order to handle the data replication and failover.
Cool, cool. Thank you for that. And this leads us to the next part to visualize more on what we discussed so far and what you just said. So let's take a look on this diagram of this architecture of Microsoft SQL always-on failover cluster instances. And what we can see is shared storage, but there's a bit of twist from traditional architecture. So typically with traditional SQL FCI, only the SQL servers are HA, highly available. And historically storage has not been, but with FSx ONTAP multi-availabilities on deployment, you can augment the traditional FCI architecture to include HA redundant shared storage layer while maintaining the standard license, just as you said. Now note that in this architecture, you can use FSx ONTAP whether as a file storage using SMB for SQL or as a block storage for SQL or for other databases as well. So this architecture can be generalized to other databases as well. And the entire capabilities that we covered relevant not only for SQL, even though we're using it as an example here. So this is where FSx ONTAP can help you reduce on licensing costs. Otherwise, typically you would need to move to always-on availability group, which would require the enterprise license and not use shared storage. So this is one option. And for those of you who need to go further and have a DR and even more protection for your self-managed databases, we zoom out a bit, and on the left side, we see essentially the same architecture with the asynchronous replication, with synchronous replication and the shared file system across multi-AZ. But now we also have asynchronous replication to a completely different region. And with FSx ONTAP, this is not only available, it's considered well architected for production level database servers. And then the secondary region can be configured as a warm standby, cold standby, long-term archive backup, etc. So with this architecture, you're still using FCI, even though you're also having it on a different region. And by that, again, save on the database licensing. Now, to take it a bit more practical, there's several options to automate your operation, starting with CloudFormation for the deployment and Ansible and Terraform for the operation. And there is another tool called NetApp BlueXP Workload Factory for AWS, which I would like to dedicate a couple minutes to show you what it is. Workload Factory helps you to assess, plan, provision, and move workloads to FSx ONTAP deployments, and by that help you to meet the desired performance and cost while adhering to industry best practices. So what I'm talking about is that to achieve the benefits that we covered so far, there's quite a couple configuration that you need to take into account. You see here the example, it applies both on the database layer and the compute layer and the storage layer. And in order to optimally utilize all those great benefits, you have to know how to configure your environments correctly. Now, there's a lot of great resources on AWS website and on NetApp TRs that all there is detailed. But if you're looking for a shortcut to do that and a way to explore the benefits of FSx ONTAP, you can just use Workload Factory for that. So let me take just a couple of minutes to show you what it is. So now I logged into Workload Factory. This is a free of charge service. We're also sending you now a link through the chat that you can try it yourself. It requires a very simple registration, and it's free of charge. It's well architected. And as we said, it can optimize and automate operations. Recently, we added new Ask Me feature, which essentially you can ask any questions about FSx ONTAP and workload factory, and it would help you to understand, to give you information about it. So for example, if I have a question about how can I save costs by using FSx ONTAP for MySQL, just the basic questions related to what we discussed today, right? So if I click on next, it is an AI agent with a knowledge base related to FSx ONTAP and workload factory, and will provide me the answer for my question. It can be a very basic question like this one. It can be more practical about deployment, best practices, etc. It will provide me an answer, and even more importantly, it will relate to the relevant resources that I can use for that. But besides that, workload factory supports different workloads. We're, of course, today focusing on databases, and nice next step can be to calculate savings to understand how much it's going to cost for me. So there's a different cost calculators built into workload factory. I would like to show you one of them, which is comparing to on-premises environment and help you translate on-premises configuration. So what workload factor provides here is the ability to download a script running on premises. And once you run it, you can upload it back to workload factory. Once it's uploaded, workload factory will analyze it and present your existing environments on premises. Now going to one of them, what it does, it translates your on-premises configuration to optimal AWS configuration. So we see assessment of the cost that it would be using different storage services, whether FSx ONTAP or other. We can see the cost savings, and we can see the parameters it already collected from on-premises environment. We can play with it, we can change them, and we can see a full cost breakdown of them. And it goes even more detailed than that. We can see all the assumptions that were taken into the consideration. We can see details of the configuration itself. And if we're happy with those results, we can ask Workload Factory to deploy it for us. So there's a simple wizard to deploy the new environments on AWS, adhering all the best practices, all the configuration that you need to go and search and find. It does all that automatically. And also what you can do is just a copy code that's created automatically on different formats and run it outside of Workload Factory on your infrastructure as a choice, infrastructure as a code as a choice. So this is one feature that I wanted to highlight. If you want to just to use it as a cost calculator and not using from on-premises, you can do that as well. You can just go choose the service that you would like to compare to and manually enter the parameters, and Workload Factory will do the calculation of your environments, what would be the cost, what are the optimal configuration that you need to take into consideration, and compare them to other storage services. So this is one very nice option that you can do to, as a next step, to, if you like what you hear on about workloads, about FSx ONTAP, this is one very nice next step to do. This is not the only one. We'll show you another one in a moment. I would like first to summarize the benefits that FSx ONTAP provides for this workload. So to summarize, FSx ONTAP can help you optimize your database operation by quickly creating new database environments with minimal cost. It can ensure data protection and meet strict RPO and RTO requirements through application-aware snapshot, advanced disaster recovery, and backup capabilities. It can maintain high performance with low latencies, high throughput, high IOPS, and smart caching. And it can help you achieve cost optimization by utilizing fewer EC2 instances and leveraging storage efficiency technology, resulting in potential cost reduction of up to 50%. Now, I would like to take a moment now to run another poll and ask you what you believe is the most important capability FSx ONTAP for database provides for database operations. So we have 4 options, which are the 4 that we just saw on the slide. First is the cloning capability to create new clones and refresh databases, instantly adding no additional capacity or cost until we have changes to those environments. whether it be data protection, whether it also can be the third option of high performance or cost optimization. Which one speaks the most to you? We're really keen to see your results. So let's take another couple of seconds just to let everyone to reply to the poll. Which one out of those four is the most you believe is the most important? And I think we can now go to the results. So yeah, 40% believe that cost optimization is the most important capability, 24% is high performance, then 20% for data protection, and 60% database cloning. Pretty much close to each other, I must say. And this is interesting to see how all the benefits, of course, in practice, you don't have to choose. You're getting all of them by using FSx for ONTAP, right? So yes, so if you like what you see here and you ask yourself what should be in the next step, so we already covered one, right, which is Workload Factory, but we're also having now a roadshow of hands-on database workshops. We already had two very successful workshops, and we have four coming soon. You can see the date and location on the slide on your screen. And you are welcome to use this QR code to register to it. We have great experts there providing these immersive hands-on workshops, and it will teach you techniques and educate you with all what you need to know about how to run databases, different types of databases, and for self-managed option. So this is one option, one next step or second next step. And maybe the most common one is the complementary assessment. So Mackenzie, can you please elaborate a bit more about this option?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Simeon. So in addition to the database roadshow, we also offer a complimentary AWS storage assessment. So it's a great way to get started by gaining valuable insights into your data sets. And it can also help you determine sort of which workloads would be a good fit for FSxN. So we definitely recommend this as an option to get started. So if you're interested, please use the QR code and we will certainly follow up.
Thank you, Mackenzie. So you're welcome to use the QR code to get this assessment. And I think now it's a good option to go to question and see a couple of them. And let's see. All right, I see Alon. Thank you that you already answered in written, but still, let's go. And you're welcome to keep the question going and to ask another questions. So first, by cloning, the question is, by cloning, are you suggesting to provision the non-production databases from snapshot on demand, not keep running always? I'm not sure. I'm not sure I understand the questions. So I just elaborate a bit more about cloning. So the cloning can be run from the production environment or from another environment. Many customers prefer to do it on another environment, but there's no, you can do it also on the production environment. It did not affect the operations because they are very instant, very lightweight, and created from the snapshot. And then you can create them, provide access to the new environments, and then clean them up and create new ones. You can also keep them. It really depends on the use case. How frequently are you refreshing the database data, and how many environments you have. So all those are valid options. I hope I'm addressing the question. If not, you're welcome to write more, and I will elaborate. All right. There's a question about the learning curve when running databases on premises versus AWS. How much do runbooks change? Craig, would you like to address it?
Sure. So depending on what technology you use for failover, running SQL or any other database on a VM or an EC2 instance, the runbooks are mostly the same. The one caveat when you're running any kind of cluster, either always on availability groups or Windows failover clustering FCI, is that the cluster will be configured as a stretch cluster, which is a Microsoft standard way of configuring that. It's a very minor change. It just means that the SQL client will read the DNS response or the DNS result and interpret which EC2 instance or which VM is the active node.
Thank you. There's another one for you, Craig, that I would like you to address. I'm very surprised how come that the file system is most effective room to have database host in it, because comparatively I came across all databases are hosted on SanDisk. Please correct me on this context.
I might need some clarification, but I think what we're trying to distinguish here is an AWS Elastic Block Storage or EBS volume would be considered direct attached storage, and there's lots of performance adjustments that you can make to it, or different storage types you can use. But the key thing is that there's no other what we would call storage features. In other words, there's no replication, volume replication, deduplication, compression, and so forth that's handled at the direct storage with the direct storage configuration like that, direct attached. When we use something like FSX for NetApp ONTAP, those storage technologies become available. So compression, deduplication, replication, and so forth. And then as we mentioned, in the case of NetApp ONTAP, there's lots of different ways to attach it. You can attach it as block storage using the iSCSI protocol, or you can, in the case of Microsoft SQL, attach it with an SMB, the SMB protocol, SMB 3.1. And NetApp also supports NFS, but that wouldn't necessarily be used with Microsoft SQL.
Thank you. There's a question about simulation of the current SQL server in AWS and evaluate the cost benefits. So the demo that I showed, it was really quick about Workload Factory. This is the place we have SQL on-premises Microsoft SQL Migration Advisor. So you can run the scripts on premises, and it will translate the configuration to an optimal way on AWS and assess the cost. Also, you can use the complementary assessment to use this QR code, and our team will help you to do that for you. It utilizes different assessment tools. One of them is Workload Factory, so you can do it yourself. You can use the complementary assessment to do just that. Okay. All right, there's a bit more tactical questions. I think that we addressed most of them. Great questions, and you're welcome to keep them coming. All right, I see that you already addressed it, Craig, but maybe we'll read it too so everybody can see. When you reduce SQL licensing, are you suggesting handling a failover via DNS using a load balancer, or is there a native SQL standard function? So if you can address it again, besides the written question.
Yeah, sure. So we wouldn't use load balancers. The SQL client that runs in Windows is able to do a DNS lookup for the name and receive multiple IP addresses back, and then determine which is the active node. If you don't want that, or the SQL client that you're using won't function in that manner, won't be able to determine the active node, then at the cluster level, you can tell SQL to only register one IP address, and then you set a proportionately lower TTL on that. So that's all a configuration that's done at the SQL Server level or Windows failover clustering level. It's not something you would put behind a load balancer. And nothing that you would have to do manually. Again, SQL is able to manage DNS registrations to correspond with failover status.
There's another question about the cost reduction. How curious how to get this number. So again, we see it from customers, generally speaking, from customers, and we see actually even more than the 50% as we showed at the beginning. But again, Workload Factory you can play with it, enter your parameters and see the potential cost savings.
Yeah, and I think you said that links into the AWS costs calculator, and that I think what you could do is take two VMs, so two EC2 instances, and put direct attached storage, and then specify the SQL Enterprise license, and then do the same comparison, same two EC2 instances if you want to type, and then add a proportionate amount of NetApp FSx storage to it. And then compare the cost there, and then make adjustments as you would want to. As we mentioned, you can potentially reduce the size of your EC2 instances because the CPUs that are being used to do deduplication or storage replication, we don't need to license those for SQL anymore. So we can potentially reduce the VM size or the instance size that is running SQL. And when you reduce the size, you can also reduce the licensing costs as well.
Yeah. All right, if nothing comes, let's take the last question. See, at the beginning, there was a question about getting similar cost savings for smaller workloads. So the answer is yes, it really depends on the use cases. It depends on what is your environment, what are the requirements in terms of the availability, the data protection, do you use DR, how many environments and database you have. So all those impact on the cost savings it provides. Usually, as the requirements are more advanced, there's more that FSx for ONTAP can help with and help you to save on costs. So yeah, this is the answer for that.
I think another point to go along with that is sometimes the small use cases are the development and the test use cases. So there might be a larger production environment, and then we have a smaller test environment. And I think what we highlighted is with the mirroring technology, the zero footprint snapshots and that sort of thing, that's where you've got the potential to reduce cost in small environments or lower tier environments.
All right, I think we're addressed it and we cover the content that we have for today. So thank you, everyone. Thank you for being with us today. Mackenzie, would you like to wrap it up?
Yeah, absolutely. No, thank you all for joining. We hope you found the session valuable. We will follow up via email, include the recording, and sort of further the conversation. So thank you all again. Appreciate your time.
Thank you. Take care.